Lionel could hardly believe that 18 years had already passed since the day he left his wife, abandoning her without explanations, pregnant and full of questions. Now, there he was, so close to her once again, desperately wanting to approach. But before he could take the first step, a firm hand on his shoulder and an authoritative voice stopped him. What his ex-wife never knew was that there was much more behind that abandonment than she could have imagined. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. In the hustle and bustle of the airport, Lionel watched from afar the two figures that meant so much to him. His heart raced as he saw Lorraine, the woman he had deeply loved 18 years ago. Beside her, a young woman with red hair and familiar eyes caught his attention. It was Vivian, his daughter. The resemblance was undeniable, the same features, the same height. A lump formed in his throat. For a brief moment, Lionel felt the urge to run to them and embrace them. He wanted to explain everything, ask for forgiveness, and make up for lost time. But a firm hand on his shoulder stopped him. Lionel, we agreed that you could only see them from afar. You can't get any closer. It's time for us to go, said a man beside him. Those words brought him back to reality. Lionel closed his eyes, letting the memories flood his mind. He was transported back 18 years, to the night when it all began. It was an ordinary Wednesday, the kind of night when the local bar was packed with people eager to forget the problems of their daily lives, losing themselves in the contagious energy of an important soccer game. The atmosphere was immersed in a constant buzz, where excited shouts and laughter mingled with the sound of live broadcasts echoing from the large screens scattered around the room. Lionel was there, as he had been many times before, sitting at the counter with a cold beer in hand. His eyes were attentively following every movement on the screen, but his mind was somewhere else, perhaps searching for a distraction from the routine his life had become. That's when she walked in. The moment Lauren walked through the door, it seemed as if the entire bar had paused, although it was just Lionel's perception. Unlike the other patrons, she seemed completely out of place in that noisy and bustling environment. Her large, expressive brown eyes scanned the room as if she were looking for something, or someone. The floral dress she wore, delicate and simple, contrasted with the jeans and sports shirts around her, while the small bag hung from her shoulder like an improvised last-minute accessory. Her brown hair, casually tied in a ponytail, swayed gently as she walked, giving her an aura of innocence that immediately caught Lionel's attention. He watched her for a few minutes, intrigued by the contrast between her serene presence and the chaos surrounding her. Lauren appeared increasingly uncomfortable, out of place in the hostile environment that seemed so at odds with her. Lionel noticed how her eyes nervously darted from one corner of the bar to another, as if expecting someone to appear and rescue her from the situation. Finally, Lionel decided that he could not leave her there alone and apprehensive any longer. Taking a quick sip of his beer, he stood up and walked over to her, determined to offer her an escape. "Hello," he said, his voice resonating with a rare kindness in that environment, accompanied by a smile that tried to convey calm. "Are you looking for someone?" Lauren seemed taken aback by Lionel's approach, but her face softened into a shy smile, a reflection of her natural politeness. "Actually, yes," she replied, with a slight hesitation in her voice. "My friend convinced me to come, but she ended up leaving with a guy she met. I'm waiting for her to come back." Lionel nodded, already familiar with similar stories. "You know, in my experience," he said, adopting a more relaxed tone, "it's quite likely she won't be back anytime soon." Lauren sighed, casting a brief glance at the bar's exit, as if she could see her friend reappearing at any moment, but soon returned to the present with a resigned sigh. "I think you're right. Maybe I should just leave." Lionel saw the perfect opportunity. He didn't want this brief interaction to end so quickly, not after feeling the connection that seemed to emerge between them. "Or," he suggested, leaning slightly forward as if proposing something unexpected. "You could stay and keep me company. I promise to be better than watching the game alone." There was a moment of hesitation in Lauren's eyes, a brief internal debate about whether or not to accept the proposal from this stranger. But there was something in Lionel's warm smile, in the way he looked at her with respect and genuine interest, that made her feel safe. She decided that at that moment maybe the best thing was to allow herself something new. "All right, why not?" she replied, a small smile forming on her lips as she accepted the company Lionel offered her. And so, the noisy bar, which once seemed like a hostile and unsettling environment, began to transform into a cosier setting as the two sat together and started to converse. The words flowed naturally, and the sound of the game became a distant background to what would turn out to be an unforgettable night. The following hours passed in the blink of an eye. Lionel and Lauren talked about everything and nothing, laughing and sharing stories as if they were old friends. He spoke about his work in the commercial field and his frequent business trips. Lauren passionately talked about her job as a kindergarten teacher. "Children are incredible," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Every day is a new adventure. Just yesterday, one of the little ones arrived so proud because he had learned to tie his own shoes. You should have seen his joy." Lionel smiled, enchanted by her enthusiasm. There was something pure and genuine about Lauren that attracted him deeply. When they realised it, it was already past midnight. They exchanged phone numbers, promising to meet again when Lionel was in town. In the weeks and months that followed, the meetings between Lionel and Lauren became increasingly frequent, despite Lionel's constant business trips. He was always out of town, travelling to different destinations due to the demanding nature of his profession. Even so, Lionel made a point to seize every free moment to be with Lauren, as if he wanted to make up for the time spent away. When he was in town, they met in charming and quiet cafes, where they could talk for hours, sharing confidences and laughter. Lionel seemed fascinated by every word Lauren said, and she, in turn, felt special, as if the whole world around them disappeared when they were together. In parks, they walked side by side, their hands intertwined, while sharing stories of their lives and dreams for the future. Time seemed to fly, and each farewell was marked by a touch of sadness, for Lauren knew that soon Lionel would leave again for another trip. Even with the constant ups and downs, their relationship blossomed. Lionel would surprise her with unexpected invitations to movie sessions, where they would sit at the back of the theatre, simply enjoying each other's company without the need to speak. Those moments together were precious, like small refuges amid the fast-paced routine and the inevitable separations. For Lauren, each reunion with Lionel was magical, as if time stopped so they could create memories that would sustain her until he returned. She knew that his life was full of commitments and responsibilities, but that only made the moments they shared even more valuable. With each departure, Lionel promised to return as soon as possible, and Lauren, even feeling the longing, waited patiently, knowing that when he came back, the world around them would disappear, leaving just the two of them, as if nothing else mattered. Lauren became more and more enchanted by Lionel's kindness and good humour. He always had a funny story to tell, always knew how to make her smile on difficult days, and each moment by his side seemed to fill her life with light. However, behind this charming exterior, there was a sense of mystery that Lauren couldn't ignore. Lionel spoke little about his life beyond work and never mentioned friends or family. "I'm a lone wolf," he would say with an enigmatic smile, avoiding delving into any conversation that touched on his past or personal relationships. As time went by, Lauren began to notice a pattern that intrigued her. Lionel always found an excuse not to attend events with her friends. Whenever she invited him to a party, a dinner, or any social gathering, there would be a last-minute meeting or an unavoidable commitment. At first, Lauren didn't think much of it. She understood that his work was demanding, but over time, she began to wonder why he was never available to meet the important people in her life. Another peculiarity that caught her attention was Lionel's aversion to photos. Whenever Lauren suggested taking a picture together to keep as a memento, Lionel politely declined. "I prefer to keep the moments in my memory," he would say, accompanying his words with a smile that left no room for insistence. He justified this resistance by saying that he had had problems in the past with an obsessive ex-girlfriend who stalked him on social media, which led him to ask Lauren to avoid posting anything about him online. Although Lauren respected the request, it created an invisible barrier between them, as if an important part of Lionel's life was eternally out of reach. In love, Lauren chose to ignore these signs that were becoming harder and harder to overlook every day. Her friends began to joke, saying she had an imaginary boyfriend, since no one had ever seen him. Lionel was a figure shrouded in mystery, present only in the stories that Lorraine told with such affection. However, to her, the love she felt for Lionel was real and too intense to be questioned. She clung to the certainty that what they had was special, even if he insisted on keeping certain parts of his life wrapped in secrecy. It was on a Saturday night that the first doubts began to arise. Lionel was in town, and the two were planning a quiet dinner at home. Lauren's phone rang. It was her friend Melissa, inviting her to a last-minute birthday party. "Come on, Lionel," Lauren insisted, her tone laden with expectation. She knew convincing Lionel to step out of his comfort zone wouldn't be easy, but she was determined. "It will be fun, and I can finally introduce you to my friends. They are eager to meet you." Lionel hesitated, and Lorraine could see the tension growing on his face. He looked to the side, as if searching for an escape, any excuse to avoid that invitation. "I don't know, Lauren. You know I don't like parties much." His voice was calm, but Lauren noticed a slight tremor, as if the mere idea of being surrounded by strangers deeply unsettled him. Lauren, however, was not willing to give in so easily. She knew that this meeting was important to her, and she wanted Lionel to be part of this aspect of her life. "Please," she pleaded, giving him a pitiful look, her big, hopeful eyes fixed on him. "It's important to me. Just this once. I promise it won't be that bad." Lionel remained silent for a few seconds, his mind clearly grappling with Lorraine's request. He could sense the sincerity and the importance it held for her, and that made him hesitate. After a long sigh and a resigned look, he finally conceded. "All right," he said, forcing a smile that tried to look cheerful. "Let's go to the party." When they arrived at the party, the atmosphere was lively, with loud music and casual conversations filling the air. To Lauren's surprise, Lionel proved to be quite sociable from the start. Despite his initial discomfort, he seemed to adapt quickly, as if wearing a mask of confidence. He chatted animatedly with the guests, cracked jokes that elicited genuine laughter, and soon became the centre of attention. His natural charisma shone, and he seemed at ease, although Lauren knew it was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. As the night progressed, Lorraine watched Lionel with admiration. Seeing how he could captivate her friends, even while out of his comfort zone, filled her heart with pride. Finally, she thought, her friends could see the incredible man she had fallen in love with, the one who always made her smile, even on the toughest days. At a certain moment, while Lionel was surrounded by a group of people laughing at one of his funny stories, Melissa, one of Lauren's closest friends, discreetly pulled her aside. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Wow, girl, he really is amazing, so charming and polite. You can see in his eyes how much he loves you." Lauren felt a warm glow spread through her chest. Those words were exactly what she wanted to hear. "I know," she replied, unable to contain the smile that spread across her face. She looked at Lionel, who was now chatting animatedly with another group of friends. "Finally, my friends are meeting the man I'm in love with," she thought, feeling proud and happy that he had accepted the invitation and integrated so well into this part of her life. That night, as laughter and conversations continued around them, Lauren felt that something had changed. Lionel, the enigmatic man who had often avoided being among her friends, had shown a new facet, revealing not only his charisma but also how much he cared for her. And that, for Lorraine, meant everything. The night was unfolding perfectly, with laughter and conversations flowing easily, until Jason, the birthday girl's troublesome brother, made his clumsy entrance. The light and joyful atmosphere of the party began to change the moment he walked through the door. Jason was visibly intoxicated, his staggering gait and loud voice betraying the state he was in. He stumbled over his own feet, and his eyes, red and half-closed, seemed to wander aimlessly through the crowded room. As he approached the group where Lionel and Lauren were, his eyes suddenly fixed on Lionel, as if something in his muddled mind had finally clicked into place. "Hey, I know you," Jason exclaimed, his voice slurred as he pointed a trembling finger directly at Lionel. His expression, a mix of surprise and accusation, caused the surrounding conversation to abruptly cease, all eyes now turned towards the unfolding scene. Lionel, caught off guard, forced a polite smile, but Lauren immediately noticed the change in his posture. His body, which had been relaxed before, grew tense, as if he were bracing himself for an uncomfortable situation. "I think you're confusing me with someone else," Lionel replied with a calmness that seemed almost rehearsed, but there was a stiffness in his voice that Lauren couldn't ignore. But Jason, in his drunken state, was determined not to let the matter drop. "No, I'm sure," he insisted, shaking his head as if trying to clear his thoughts. "You were at that party 2 days ago, weren't you?" "Yeah, I remember seeing you there." Confusion took over Lauren's face. She frowned, looking from Jason to Lionel, trying to understand what was happening. "It can't be him, Jason," she said, trying to maintain her composure. "Lionel wasn't in town 2 days ago." Her voice sounded firm, but there was a growing unease inside her. The atmosphere at the party changed drastically. The previously light and relaxed environment became heavy and uncomfortable. Jason, completely ignoring the discomfort he had caused, kept insisting that he had seen Lionel somewhere else. The other guests, visibly embarrassed, tried to divert attention and change the subject, but the damage was already done. Lionel, despite the smile he kept on his face, couldn't hide the discomfort that consumed him. His eyes avoided direct contact, and he moved nervously, as if he were trapped. Lauren, on the other hand, felt a wave of doubts and uncertainties growing within her. Something was very wrong, and for the first time she began to question whether she really knew the man at her side. It didn't take long for the couple to decide to leave. The ride back home was done in tense silence. Lauren looked out the car window, her mind filled with doubts and questions. When they got home, she couldn't take it anymore. "Lionel, what was that? Why did Jason insist so much that he saw you?" Lionel sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Lauren, are you really going to believe the words of a drunk?" He was clearly confused. "But what if—" Lauren hesitated, afraid to voice her fears. "What if you have another family? Another life that I don't know about?" Lionel's expression softened. He approached, holding Lauren's hands in his. "My love, how can you think that? I love you. I love only you. Actually," he paused, his eyes shining with emotion, "I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you." Lionel's words momentarily dissipated Lauren's doubts. She threw herself into his arms, tears of happiness streaming down her face. The following week, they got married in a simple ceremony at the town hall. Only 2 close friends of Lauren were present as witnesses. Despite his aversion to photos, Lionel agreed to take a single photo to mark the special moment. The months that followed were of pure happiness for Lauren. She felt complete, fulfilled. Of course, Lionel's business trips were becoming more frequent, but she understood that it was part of his profession. Then, on a sunny morning, Lauren discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and anticipation. It was Lionel's birthday and she was planning to make a special surprise. Excited, Lauren decided to post a picture of the wedding on her social media, accompanied by a loving birthday message for her husband. Little did she know that this seemingly innocent gesture would change their lives forever. As the hours passed with no sign of Lionel arriving, Lauren tried calling him, but it always went to voicemail. Anxiety grew in her chest. On the living room table, a cake and a small baby shoe were waiting to reveal the big news. It was past 10 at night when the door suddenly burst open, slamming against the wall with a bang that echoed through the silent house. Lionel rushed in, his face pale, and a nearly palpable tension emanated from his body. His eyes, usually warm, were now wide with fear and worry. "Lauren, what have you done? Why did you post that photo on the internet?" he asked, his voice trembling and full of urgency. There was something desperate in his tone that Lauren had never heard before, and it made her freeze inside. Before Lauren could formulate a response, Lionel was already in motion. He crossed the room and headed to the bedroom, where he began throwing clothes into a suitcase with frantic speed. His hands trembled as he grabbed the first pieces of clothing he found, not caring to fold them or choose what he actually needed. He acted as if he were fleeing from imminent danger, as if every second lost could cost him dearly. "What's going on?" Lauren managed to ask, her voice trembling as tears began to form in her eyes. She felt the panic rising within her, not understanding what was happening, but knowing that something terrible was about to occur. Lionel paused for a brief moment, his hand still holding a slightly crumpled shirt. He looked at Lauren, and for an instant, all the pain, love, and despair he felt were reflected in his eyes. "Lauren, I love you. I love you more than my own life," he said, his voice breaking. In a swift motion, he dropped the shirt and crossed the room to envelop her in a tight embrace. It was as if he wanted to etch that moment into his memory, as if he knew it could be the last time he held her like that. He then kissed her with an intensity that mixed passion and despair, as if trying to express everything he couldn't put into words. When the kiss ended, Lionel stepped back, his eyes fixed on hers, as if wanting to say something more, but the words didn't come out. As he turned to leave, Lauren, amidst her desperation, shouted, "Lionel, I'm pregnant!" The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap, echoing through the room and stopping Lionel in his tracks. He froze for an instant, his hand still gripping the suitcase. Slowly he turned, his eyes meeting Lauren's, now wide with surprise and pain. He seemed torn between the desire to run to her and the need to continue with whatever it was that was forcing him to leave. For a brief moment, Lionel hesitated, his eyes glistening with tears that he struggled to hold back. Lauren felt hope swell in her chest, believing that her revelation might be enough to make him stay. But then, as if an invisible decision had been made within him, Lionel closed his eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and turned towards the door. With a broken heart, he quickly left, leaving Lauren alone and confused amid the chaos. Lauren's last words echoed in his mind as he walked away, knowing that the love he felt for her and the child she carried was not enough to protect them from what lay ahead. And with that thought, he disappeared into the night, his heart heavy with the choice he had just made. The days that followed were a blur of tears and unanswered questions. Lauren searched for Lionel in every possible place. The company where he claimed to work had never heard of him. It was as if he had simply vanished. As her belly grew, Lauren clung to the hope that Lionel would return, that there would be an explanation for everything. And then the envelopes started to arrive. Every month, punctually, she received an envelope with no sender, containing a considerable sum of money. Lauren knew, deep in her heart, that this money came from Lionel. It was his way of taking care of her and the baby, even from a distance. But why couldn't he be present? What was keeping him from returning to his family? The years went by. Vivienne was born and grew up to become a beautiful and intelligent young woman. Lauren never stopped loving Lionel, but she learned to live without him, focusing all her energy and love on her daughter. And now, 18 years later, there they were at the airport, ready for a mother-daughter vacation. Lauren had no idea that just a few meters away, the man who had never left her thoughts was watching them with a broken heart. Lionel took one last look at Lauren and Vivienne, imprinting every detail in his memory. The heavy hand on his shoulder reminded him of his reality. "Let's go, Lionel. We can't risk them seeing you. "Let them live their lives, they are fine," said the man accompanying him. With a heavy sigh, Lionel turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind, once again, the love of his life and the daughter he never knew. The truth that Lauren would never know was that Lionel was not just an ordinary employee of a company. He was, in fact, an undercover police officer. When he met Lauren, he was in the middle of a mission to dismantle a dangerous drug trafficking ring. He was working undercover. This was the reason Jason had seen him at a party. The photo Lauren innocently posted on social media was the tipping point. His cover was blown, putting not only his life at risk, but also Lauren's and the child she was carrying. To protect them, Lionel had to disappear. For the past 18 years, he lived under protection, his identity erased. He was an important witness in a case that was dragging on in court. Each day away from his family was torture, but knowing they were safe gave him the strength to continue. As he walked toward the airport exit, blending into the crowd, Lionel felt a gaze on his back. For a brief moment, he turned around. Lauren was standing in the middle of the lobby, her eyes fixed on him. There was recognition in her gaze, a spark of hope. But before she could be sure, before she could call out his name, Lionel vanished into the crowd. Lauren blinked, confused. Had it just been her imagination? So many times over the past years she had thought she saw Lionel, only to discover it was a stranger with a vague resemblance. "Mum, is everything okay?" Vivienne's voice brought her back to reality. Lauren smiled at her daughter, brushing off the strange feeling that had overtaken her. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything's fine. Shall we go?" Mother and daughter went on their way, unaware that the man who had so profoundly impacted their lives was so close, yet so far away. Lionel watched the plane take off through the airport window, silent tears streaming down his face. He had made the hardest decision of his life, to abandon his great love and the entire future he would have had with his family to protect them. The pain was immense, but knowing that Lauren and Vivienne were safe and happy gave him some comfort. Perhaps one day, when everything was over, when the danger had finally passed, he could return. Until then, he would live with memories and the hope of a reunion. Lionel's sacrifice was a silent testament to his love. A love so deep that it led him to give up his own happiness for the safety of those he loved most. Neither Lorraine nor Vivienne would ever know the true extent of this sacrifice, but their lives were shaped by it. As the sun set on the horizon, Lionel made a silent promise. One day somehow he would find a way back to his family. Until then, he would continue watching over them from afar, an invisible guardian, guided by a love that neither time nor distance could erase. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.